And welcome back. Now, a document purported to be the SARS rogue unit, so-called rogue unit report, is being circulated on social media. The 2014 report by the Inspector General of Intelligence was commissioned by the then State Intelligence Minister David Mahlobo to investigate the so-called rogue unit allegations linked to former SARS Commissioner Pravin Gordhan. Meanwhile, the Equality Court on Monday dismissed Gordhan's application to strike that report attached as an annexure in the EFF's court papers. Now, EFF spokesperson Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is here to discuss this and other EFF-related matters with us. Thanks for coming through this morning.
Appreciate it, and good morning to all the viewers.
So let's just start here by establishing first and foremost whether this report that is currently in circulation is in fact the one that is attached to the EFF's court papers.
Well, I hope so. I hope we're talking about the same report.
65-page report.
If it is a report that the IGI compiled, there is only one report that the Inspector General of Intelligence compiled in relation to the activities that are now called the activities of the rogue unit, which we also are using in our court papers. And as you rightly indicated, there was an entire case in which the applicants, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, tried to have it remain in the secret. And the court not only dismissed it, but struck his case off the roll. So it's part of open court documents, meaning it's publicized, and it's going to be part of open court deliberations in his case regarding hate speech.
So let's just take it a few steps back, because now you're bringing these matters, and of course this particular report was referenced in terms of things that were said against Pravin Gordhan, for which he went to the Equality Court. So maybe let's just take a few steps back to make sure that our viewers are with us as we talk about this. So first and foremost, the Equality Court decision on Monday. Let's just explain to our viewers what happened there.
Well, the president of the EFF was made a speech around November last year at the State Capture Commission when Jam Nandas was appearing. It was on that occasion where he made very harsh statements regarding his conduct, not only in the UDF days, but also when he became a SARS Commissioner. And then he went, Pravin Gordhan, to press charges to say that some of those statements were hate speech. As part of our defense, or as part of the president's defense, the president attached this document. And it's amongst a set of documents that prove, or that are supposed to serve as evidence, why he was making the statements he was making outside the State Capture Commission of Inquiry during a protest of the EFF. And Pravin made an application that the IGI report must not be part of those documents, meaning must not be part of our defense evidence. And so that matter was heard on Monday as to why shouldn't we use this document in our defense in court against his charges or his claims that we were engaged in hate speech. And the judge dismissed it. And as you can understand, it's because, you know, the Inspector General of Intelligence, of all the reports that were ever written about the rogue unit and the activities of that unit inside SARS, the Inspector General is the most powerful because he's got a clearance, or that office has got an intelligence clearance. It's able to go into spaces where advocates Kakane, KPMG, and all of them could not necessarily get into. And it's a very powerful constitutional structure. And I think that it carries more weight. It is it and the public protector of all of them that carry serious constitutional weight in relation to some of the findings that they make.
Now, let's talk about the significance of this so-called rogue unit. And because some say that this is part of an agenda a concerted effort from the EFF and others who wish to bring down Pravin Gordhan and others implicated in that. And, you know, what is the motivation? Why is this matter of the so-called rogue unit such an important one?
Well, you're correct. We have an agenda to bring down Pravin Gordhan because he abused his power as a SARS Commissioner. If you abuse your power, we want to bring you down. We have an agenda to bring down Zuma. We make no apology about that. You undermine the Constitution. You steal the public's money. You misuse public funds. We come on you. We've got a constitutional duty as members of parliament. As an opposition party, we took an oath to do that, to do precisely that. So the activities of the rogue unit, number one, they were engaged in a lot of covert operations and covert intelligence operations. So there are two separate questions. The first one relates to the fact that it was illegal in the first place in relation to the provisions of in our law, constitutionally and in the legislation, as to what it takes for you to set up a unit in any government department. You must get the constitutional provisions is that the president is the only one that can give that permission, number one, that can set up such a unit. But number two, it must be set up within legislation so that it does not abuse power, so that it also is held accountable. So military defense, criminal crime intelligence, as well as SSA, they are all held accountable in Parliament through the Joint Intelligence Committee. And so if this unit was legal, one of the obvious questions is, who was holding it accountable? Who monitored its activities? So there's that question, and that question is in front of our courts. But I can tell you now without a shadow of doubt, there's no court that is going to find that the rogue unit, the way it was set up in SARS, was legal. But secondly, it's that it was engaged in illegal activities, which are detailed there. They spied on Mr. Zuma, they spied on Mr. Malema, they spied on a lot of people, Zizi Kodwa, Mbalula. You'll see in an attachment of the AGI report in what was called the Snowman report. It details the types of training that the individuals in that unit were getting. You know, how to get into, how to break into houses. You know, how to engage in covert intelligence collection, you know, spying activities, equipments that had to be operated. So all those things are illegal, and they happened under the direction of Pravin Gordhan. And so if you did that, you should be brought down.
So when you say it happened under the direction of Pravin Gordhan, my understanding from reading this report is when the unit was set up, it was set up to look into the illicit tobacco trade and what was going on in that instance. So when you say what you're saying now about, you know, other people being investigated or having their communication intercepted, etc., what do you mean when you say Pravin was, you know, basically overseeing all of this illicit activity?
Well, they reported to him. The unit reported. First of all, he set up an illegal unit. It was not legal. That's why there is a letter that they write to NIA at the time, which is now SSA. They write to them to say that we would like to engage in this activity and would like to do it together with you. So that's a legitimate body. They come in and they discover that, no, you're already engaged in covert intelligence collection without us. So they withdraw. So one of the first most important things is that he set up an illegal unit that was engaged in covert intelligence operation, that was meant to do that.
Is there any window of opportunity for this to have happened, the illegal aspect of it, without his knowledge? Because I'm reminded of, in this report, there's a memo that was sent, and I think it was from the commissioner at the time, Pravin Gordhan, where he requests funding for setting up this unit. But he specifically states in that memo that this will be set up in accordance or in conjunction with the NIA. I think that's in the heading there. And then he also states further on that when this unit is set up, they are fully aware, at least he's fully aware when he drafts this memo, that this particular unit at SARS does not have the legislative mandate to actually do the sort of work that they are proposing. So he's fully aware of that. So is it possible that these things may have been done without his knowledge?
No, except that they continued. He's aware that there was no legislation, that they will have to do it together with some other intelligence institution or intelligence agency that has got legislation, except that they don't. They don't get the involvement of NIA. They continue without legislation. They continue without the president's approval, and they engage in covert intelligence. And part of the people that they pursue are not people in the tobacco industry. It's the people that were linked at the time, called the Friends of President Jacob Zuma, around the 2007 conference in Polokwane. And so these are not people engaged in tobacco illicit trade. These are political opponents. These are people who disagree at the time with the status quo. And even after 2007, these are the people that have been very sharp against the status quo. So those are the two things, is that there was no involvement of SSA, number one. Number two, there was no president's approval of setting up such a unit outside the existing intelligence structures, which had legislation. And that's dangerous, you see, because precisely why you need legislation, you need to set up such a body through legislation, number one, but also with the full cooperation of the sitting head of state, is that it may engage in espionage. It may engage in activities that are sabotaging national interests. And that's why even for the Minister of Intelligence to say that she doesn't want the report to come out, I mean, she should have long ago released the report when we requested her in an abridged version, take out the things that she thinks are sensitive, are going to compromise intelligence agencies, intelligence operatives elsewhere. Because this was not the activity of the NIA. This was not the activity of any of the legal intelligence agencies that are set up according to the law. This was activities that were criminal, set up inside SARS without any of the authorities, including Parliament, exercising over. None of them were held accountable about the things that were doing.
Now, this is the question, because if all these other bodies failed in their oversight role, what are you exactly aiming to do right now in terms of, you talk about this agenda against Pravin Gordhan, but what about everybody else? Or is this personal against him?
No, it's not personal. He broke the law. It's not personal.
But
I don't
what about
know.
going
none of us
after everybody else who was equally complicit in carrying out, these illicit activities, as it were?
He was the boss of them. He was the boss. He was the SARS commissioner. And so you start there. All of them have to be held accountable. Some of them are facing criminal charges as it is. But you've got to also hold those who exercise political responsibility for criminal activities. You've got to hold them accountable. So that's what's going to happen, is that we want him to be held accountable. Both reports, the Public Protector's report, the IGI report, recommend criminal charges against him. Actually, in a country that has any sense of dignity, you don't allow people to engage in such activities without legislation, particularly when you're a sitting government. They spy on presidents, they spy on political opponents. That's undemocratic. But in the end, they wield serious power in society. That's why they can, be threatening everybody around, and people tiptoe around Pravin Gordhan, because he had an intelligence unit that was working for him, that many people don't have. We don't have intelligence agencies on our part working for spying on journalists, using journalists to plant stories and so on and so forth. You could hear, for an example, what was happening in crime intelligence in the Zondo Commission. There are witnesses leading evidence to the effect that they had journalists on the payroll planting false and fake stories just so that political opponents can be discredited in the eyes of the public. We don't have that, and that's why Pravin Gordhan has to be held accountable, because people who do that, they not only offend the values that we stand for, but they are going to take our democracy backward.
So you're going to see this one through to the bitter end, this rogue unit story, because it's been interesting that we've been debating whether this unit was actually rogue or not, whereas it shouldn't be a difficult question to answer, should it?
No, not at all. I mean, part of what happened is precisely that, is that there is a big cabal in the media linked to the very individuals that were in the rogue unit. Actually, its activities are still in operation, because those people are in possession of intelligence equipment. They're in possession of information they are able to use that information, you know, as and when they see fit in order to score specific battles. Some of them political, some of them in business. So you've got to step in there. There is legislation that is very clear, as I said in the beginning, in relation to the Constitution, number one, but also the National Strategic Intelligence Act, which is very clear about what are the processes that are needed. Unless you follow those processes, what you did is illegal.
All right, let's park the rogue unit there because we're running out of time and I want to ask you about other issues as well. VBS, the EFF's position on this, especially given what has happened, given who it's happened to, given who your constituency in the main is, and also given the fact that there have been no arrests as yet. What's the EFF's position? Well,
we've always been very clear that from the beginning, I mean, the entire focus on the so-called 16 million that is linked to us, that's 0.8% of the 2 billion. Majority of the public don't know what happened to the rest of the 99%. And you know who is the rest of the 99%? It's ANC officials, municipalities that deposited and used funds in VBS. It's there in the report. Nobody's writing about it because there is a concerted agenda to discredit the EFF. We are very clear that everybody that was found, who has been found to have been in wrongdoing, must be criminally charged. And whether they are cousins or spouses or uncles of any of the EFF leadership, we've always been clear that there must be criminal prosecution, but they won't.
But what has the EFF done in this regard? Because surely as a party, you also don't want to be tainted, because I'm sure I don't have to explain to you the power of perception. So what has the EFF done to mitigate for itself its own reputation around this VBS matter?
There's nothing you can do because the EFF is not mentioned in the report. There is no official report that has mentioned the EFF, number one.
You just spoke about 0.8% linked
which is
to
purported,
the EFF.
Yes. So that 0.8% is not linked to the EFF, number one. There's no evidence to that effect. It's just an agenda in the media against our enemies that are linked to the rogue unit. Two, there's no leader of the EFF that is mentioned in the VBS report. None of us are in, because we did not have power. We don't have power to deposit funds into a bank. We don't run any municipality. We're not in any board of any bank. We don't have such power. So, but yet everybody's going around thinking we wield such a power.
Let's break it down between you and I now. Because in as much as what you've just said is correct, we go back to the perceptions that actually exist around this particular matter. You spoke earlier, you said whether it be cousins of people or whoever linked to members or even the leadership of the EFF, the law should take its course. And my question to you is, if these are members of the EFF, what has the EFF done?
Sakina, in a court of law, you don't do perceptions, you do facts.
Yes, but you are a political party. You're not a court of law. You are a political party. Perceptions are all powerful.
No, facts to us. We are people of superior logic. We're not people of perceptions. We're people of superior logic. So I'm not going to go around because there's a perception about you. This is why society is driven to the types of ill behaviors that we see in relation to gender-based violence, in relation to xenophobia, because of perceptions. If we stick to the facts, a lot of us will be saved from a lot of attitudes that are baseless. So in relation to VBS, what are the facts? The facts are, whether you like it or not, we don't own a news station. We don't own a newspaper, so I can't write every day. Every time Polifan Veig, who has a personal vendetta against us, writes and makes perceptive links to the EFF without facts, I can't constantly every day make it my agenda. That's not my agenda.
Let's speak to the factual
what are the
aspects
facts in the report? The facts in the report, there's no single leader of the EFF in the report.
What about members?
There's no EFF in the report. But we've said this. We've said this in we've said this in Parliament. We've said this in press conferences that we've held, that if there are people, they be members of the EFF, they be cousins of members of the EFF, there must be criminal prosecution. And if you look at the liquidation processes that have been going on, those people are being held accountable. Brian Shivambu, for an example, has been in pains to comply with the liquidators and their activities and their demands, the law is taking its course. But those who are criminally involved, who have done crime in relation to what happened in VBS, that doesn't include Brian, by the way, those who have done crime, those who were in charge, who took decisions to deposit municipal funds there, who took decision to award irregular loans and so on and so forth, those people are not known, number one. Number two, nothing is happening to them. And we've said over and over again that they must be held accountable. And none of them are EFF. None of them are cousins of the EFF. None of them are EFF leaders. None of them hold the membership of the EFF. They are either in the SACP or in the ANC.
We unfortunately are out of time and we have to leave it there. EFF spokesperson Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi discussing the rogue unit report and other EFF-related matters with us. And it brings us up to news time.